All right, we've now concluded the outbriefs portion of our activities, and I think this is actually a relatively historic event. Congratulations, you have been part of a consolidated, focused effort to address NEOs in a comprehensive fashion. We've got the right people here, the right topics. I think it's the right time, and right now is the time to build on this content going forward. We've identified a fair amount of forward work, and we're going to be pursuing that with vigor and systematically addressing the key issues that we've addressed here and diving a lot deeper, asking those tough questions, and more importantly, narrowing the trade space to find those solutions. So the whole point here is developing not only quality, but also some quantity to our objectives, or at least the start to base planning those objectives. And the overall topic, or the overall title of this whole activity was the Exploration Near-Earth Object Objectives Workshop, or ExploreNOW. So it is about exploring now. And so with that, I'd like to bring up our Deputy Associate Administrator for Exploration, Dr. Lori Leshin, for our concluding remarks, and no doubt a very thorough wrap-up of this productive session. Thank you.
Thank you, John, once again. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to just take a little trip back through time, since it is, of course, August 11th, 2030. And just to reflect for a moment on the amazing things that we have accomplished in the last 20 years since we set out on this journey into deep space with humanity to stay. So beyond the cradle, that's what we're talking about here, going beyond the cradle. So let's just take a moment to pause and reflect and celebrate the incredible accomplishments that we have achieved. Let's go back to the beginning. Who remembers all the way back in 2010, when then President Barack Obama said by 2025, basically we'll start by sending astronauts to an asteroid, not a NEO, by the way, an asteroid, for the first time in history. And of course, the current president, Justin Bieber, thinks that, is still a fabulous endeavor, space exploration, expanding even beyond and building in that capability to go to other destinations as well. But way back in 2010, President Obama set us on this path, and there was a very important workshop that took place right then. And even today's NASA Administrator, John Olson, who was actually at that workshop, if you can believe it, and actually ran it. So it really is a destiny and fate kind of a thing here. Poor John didn't know I was going to be doing this. But just the other day, in fact, in my preparation for this meeting, he said that, reminded me of the ExploreNOW workshop, and way back in 2010 really constituted our first steps towards human exploration of asteroids. And that meeting really did lay the foundation for our success. And essentially, we've been building on that ever since. And so let's just take a moment to reflect on those things that we have achieved. Let's talk about why. Why did we boldly go to this asteroid and start our path out into the solar system? These are my summary of those reasons that were discussed, as I recall, in great depth at the ExploreNOW workshop. Again, my perspective on these reasons. One is to drive prosperity right here on Earth by pushing the boundaries of things that humanity can achieve through cooperation, through innovation. To me, this is the whole endeavor we're involved in here is fundamentally about driving prosperity on Earth, both through the things we must invent in order to push these boundaries and to see if humans can sustainably live in space, as well as by expanding our economy out into space. Not only is prosperity through the process of actually executing a space exploration program important, but in fact, the inspiration that program drives for all of the people of Earth to see, for example, the value of science and technology as areas to invest in, as things to have our children study. Again, leading us on a path as a planet towards a prosperous future. Finally, in the sort of high-level goals for this sort of endeavor, leaving the cradle for good. That is, can we build the capability and can we ensure that humans have the capacity to be beyond Earth for good? So this program is about building that sustained capability. And then with asteroids, near-Earth asteroids, as the first target of our exploration, we can focus more on them as destinations and ask questions about understanding the origin of our planet and of the solar system from looking at these primitive objects. And even life, as we found, of course, some very interesting chemicals on some of the near-Earth asteroids that we've explored with our program, have given us clues into the origin of life. And finally, understanding the threat, whether we can identify and characterize these objects and ultimately learn to mitigate the threat to Earth from potential asteroid impacts. So these are my summaries of why we are boldly going down the path that we have been on for the last 20 years in our wonderfully sustainable program. Okay, first we did some robotic exploration. That was some of our first steps, was really about gaining the knowledge and the capability that we were going to need to set us on the sustainable path. So here was an example of some early robotic exploration of an asteroid. Too bad the robot isn't still here to see it, but maybe I'll have to send this on to Pete to enjoy. So the robotic exploration was really about paving the way for future human exploration, to understanding what these objects were like up close and personal, to really knowing how we could influence the design of our deep space systems in order to be successful in an asteroid, and how we can maximize our concept of operations and the benefit of actually having humans at these objects for short periods of time. So the robotic exploration was really important back, 10 to 15 years ago. And the other half of that equation, so that was sort of the key early knowledge we needed, and then we needed to develop some key capabilities that are going to build that foundation for our future set of missions. Things like the technologies that were talked about way back at that ExploreNOW conference, things like radiation shielding through advanced habitat systems and closed-loop life support, and basically really being able to reduce the massive stuff that we have to take with us. Inflatable habitats, more house for your money. You can launch more house for your money if you can inflate your house once you're up in space. Cryogenic fuel storage and management turns out to be a really important one for these long journeys. How we can most effectively use robotic partners in space to work with the humans at various targets, advanced propulsion systems. And of course, we have that fabulous little spacecraft that we developed, that multi-mission spacecraft, which we'll see a little bit more about later, which of course was sort of a glimmer in our eye back 20 years ago. Okay, so of course we have the brave astronauts that led the way as we explored these new worlds. So we've, as you know, sent now 3 crews out and oops, go back. Very brave first souls to explore an asteroid. And of course, Mike and John just finished their mission as we speak. Practically last week, just disembarked from their asteroid and are on their way home. So they're still out there in space exploring on our behalf. Very exciting time and highly qualified crews. And of course, they're international as well, with astronauts from Europe and Japan, somewhere probably, and Russia. So it's a highly international effort as we went out into space. So these were our brave explorers. And what did they do at these NEOs? Here's Sandy, of course, doing some sampling in a very famous picture with her rock hammer out on the asteroid. Here's some of those great shots of our spacecraft, which of course became the best-selling Lego set of all time. So again, public outreach was a huge part of what we did as we went forward. And there's not a kid in America, and probably many around the world, that have that Lego model in their room somewhere of our wonderful spacecraft. So again, we were testing out those systems. We were learning how to live and work for long periods in deep space. We were collecting incredible samples, which we'll talk about more in a second. And we were trying to start testing the the possibility of mitigation of the impact hazard. So all of these activities have taken place. They've been incredibly successful in 3 different asteroid missions. And we have a much better understanding of the scientific value of asteroids, of our potential to mitigate that hazard, and of what it's going to take to continue on to our next set of destinations. Just a couple of things about the science. Of course, it was incredible getting up close and personal with these asteroids with humans. We've learned things about what the surfaces of these objects are really like. We've come to really understand space weathering of asteroids and all this great stuff that none of us had ever heard of probably 20 years ago. Well, most of us anyway. I know some of you out there have. But incredible scientific return and incredible diversity of the population of these objects, much information about their internal structure and their composition. And, of course, the samples coming back are probably the most exciting thing. And the mass that NASA was able to really figure out how to bring back huge amounts of material. And the things we learned, of course we learned that, while they do share some similarities with meteorites we already have here on Earth, of course we discovered things we'd never seen before, and that was the incredible value there. And, of course, the Natural History Museum, where the largest samples are displayed, has quadrupled its attendance since those asteroid fragments have started being displayed there. And, of course, there's the new iconic image up next to the Apollo 8 image of the tiny Earth off in the distance, really demonstrating how into deep space we are. This is our Star Trek moment, that we are really moving far beyond the cradle. Mitigating the threat. We also did many experiments. Well, first of all, both just characterizing these asteroids and really understanding them helps us understand better how we might be able to mitigate the threat of a future asteroid impact. But we also did some tests. We got our feet wet a little bit with the mitigation strategies, looked at a couple of different options, and in fact, those experiments were successful, so it really starts giving us some confidence that if and when we would ever need to act in that direction, that we're starting to have the knowledge we need to be able to do that. So that's something that, of course, we'll continue looking at. Now that we have the capabilities to explore asteroids, we'll continue following up on these. And then as we look to the future, we've really succeeded in putting into place the foundation for sending humans out into the solar system to stay. We've developed systems that are highly flexible, that are going to allow us to explore the moon and Mars and other parts of deep space. And in fact, as you know, we are currently working on building lunar and Mars missions, which will be launching later this decade. How exciting. And of course, those folks that would like to build telescopes or do other sorts of deep space operations are also actively working on their missions with the components and the pieces of the infrastructure that we have put in place through these first steps into deep space. So we can look back and be very proud that we approached this program in a way that allowed us to really expand our horizons for deep space exploration. We have succeeded in taking ourselves beyond the cradle, and we're not looking back. But seriously. So thank you very much. So just coming to a one-page takeaway from today for me, and this is a very personal, again, takeaway. I've been overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, the innovation, the creativity, the insights, the diversity of opinions and folks that have come together to try and help us in what is very obviously a very early stage of this activity. We're kind of laying bare here that we're really just getting going, and yet we felt it was so much more important to hear from you early than to, sort of have it all figured out and then come and ask for input. So I hope you'll forgive us with a little bit of the carts and horses being mixed up. But frankly, that's, I think, the best way to influence, which one do you want to influence? The cart is to help ride the horse or something there. I don't know. I'm too confused. Yeah, right. So we appreciate you coming together for this. And I am absolutely convinced that there's a ton of stuff in what you all have produced that we will use as we formulate these activities going forward. In fact, Doug and I had lunch with some of our folks today, and we're already talking about the things that we were hearing here and how we're going to fold those into our planning. One thing I liked is to start to really see where the obvious synergies are between the goals in science and planetary defense and human spaceflight. It's clear to me that many communities can benefit from missions to asteroids, NEOs, asteroids. I want to try and fix that. I think that was a good comment. The planetary defense one, I find it to be a very interesting topic. I find it to be, obviously, I think there's a ton of potential for public engagement as well as international collaboration, because obviously it's a global issue. I also think that there are some challenging policy implications of that we probably really need to work through. And so this was very useful for me personally to start kind of seeing where those synergies exist and how we might best take advantage of those. So we need to do some more work there, and we are doing more work there, but I thought it was very, very interesting. And to me, again, as any good meeting does, it raises as many questions as it answers. And for me, here are some really key, very near-term things that we need to be working on. We need to have some hard discussions about our concept of operations for the human NEO mission around how many targets do we know we need to have and separated by what amount of time in case of schedule slips or technical issues. And are we confident we know those targets today? And this kind of gets to the question of how much does a human spaceflight program need that the survey telescope versus do we know enough today to be able to pick those targets? And we heard a lot of good discussion about that at this meeting. I think we have more work to do defining what are our real constraints for the NEOs that we would visit. And this really has highlighted that for me. So I think that's a great question. The precursor missions, again, there's a ton of great ideas here. What is the core set of measurements we need, both for that will drive the initial design of the human system and then to maximize its utility once it gets there. And those might be two separate sets. And we heard a lot of input on these questions at this meeting, and I look forward to sort of distilling that down into the answers. We heard again about a lot of very interesting and important technologies. As we all know, budgets are never infinite, and so as we have to make priorities within there, what are the ones that really come to the fore? I think we have some good ideas there, but I think we heard many more ideas today of areas where we could be investing, so very excited about that. And finally, how do we ensure that the things that we do develop it's not just a one-shot NEO, that it really is laying out the path toward humans working and living in deep space for good? And how do we make sure, because we don't have infinite funds to develop a new spacecraft every time we have a new target. We need to make sure that we're thinking this through to be evolvable, sustainable, and affordable as we go forward. So that is our challenge. It's our management challenge, Doug's and mine, I think, as we go forward, and we're going to need all of you to help us do that. Those were my takeaways. Doug, we weren't sure if he was going to be here. He is here, so I was going to invite him to come up and make a few closing remarks as well. But thank you to John and Marguerite and their whole team for pulling this together. And just in closing, I would say, this isn't the only time we're going to ask for your input. It's not the last time we're going to ask for your input. It's the first time we're asking. So we hope at least we made it a little bit entertaining and we gave you some free snacks such that you might come back again and help us with this in the future. So thank you. Doug.
Thank you, Lori. I was wondering what Lori was doing on her computer all day. So it's 2030. I was thinking I would have retired by now. I guess it's just too much fun. I really enjoyed the time I've spent here. I really appreciate your being here. That's kind of where I started this whole thing. I really appreciate the work that John, Marguerite, the Freedom folks, all those who have contributed to the planning and the work that went into this. I think that all went very smoothly. And I thank all of you for your inputs and your active participation. I think the fact that there's still a room full of people here is somewhat of a tribute to the planning and effort that you've all put into this. A lot of times in conferences and workshops, by the time you get to this point, there are not many people left. But I appreciate you all hanging in there and contributing as much as you have. I think Lori said a lot of the things that I feel about what we've done here. In a lot of ways, this is a horse before a cart. We asked you to be here, not to hear a finished product, but to contribute to the products that will begin to develop that, put together the objectives, the rationale, in terms of our path forward. I think we've generated probably as many questions as we did answers, but that's part of the process too, and it helps us lay out the forward work. I do think the conversations that I've heard were very thought-provoking. It was really a great opportunity to take some time out, step back, and think through the rationale, the objectives, the various aspects of these types of missions. It's almost a luxury in our world to be able to do that, and you have all contributed to really helping us begin to think more thoroughly about these types of missions and what's possible. This will definitely inform the work that goes forward. We had planned certain products coming out of this. I think we are going to evolve where we are with that because, and based on a lot of the information that's been generated, I think we'll find some additional ways to pull this data together and make it available. So we talked about a couple of possibilities there. But I really do, once again, want to thank you for being here. We will use this information just as we had from the efforts we had back in 2006 on lunar exploration. These will inform missions, they'll inform our planning, and once again, thank you for contributing to all that. Thanks again. Have a good evening.
What a bright future. I tell you what, the best part might be that I have that much hair in 2030. So, woo. Anyways, we are indeed done. And look at your watches, 4:30 on the dot. Would like to add that the International Space Station EVA successfully completed it as well. So while we were doing our thing, they were doing theirs, successfully removed the old ammonia pump assembly and prepared the way for the replacement of the next one, or the new assembly on the next EVA. So lots of productive work in space exploration and space operations today. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch. Good day.